Israeli strikes continued to pound Gaza as attacks killed at least 28 Palestinians at an UNRWA school sheltering displaced people in Jambalaya in the northern Gaza Strip. The government of Egypt met on Thursday with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iran to discuss the growing tensions in the Middle East. And the United Nations affirmed that the resurgence of the armed conflict in Sudan is forcing the displacement to shed of at least 25,000 people in the month of October alone. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Israeli strikes killed at least 28 Palestinians at an UNRWA school sheltering displaced people in Jambalaya in the northern Gaza Strip. The attacks have been non-stop as northern and central Gaza are the main two areas that the Israeli military has been focusing on since the early hours of this morning. One of the major attacks on the north of the Strip was conducted on one of the main UNRWA shelters in Jambalaya, a refugee camp. According to Gaza's authorities, apart from the 28 confirmed casualties, 160 others were wounded. In this context, the number of United Nations-run facilities targeted since October 2023 has risen to over 190 hit or damaged without any sort of warning. Several international organizations, including the World Health Organization, called on Israel to allow humanitarian aid into northern Gaza to rescue the thousands dying under the rubble and to distribute food and water. For 13 days, the genocidal troops have been besieging the north of the Palestinian enclave. Israel has dropped 75,000 tons of explosives on Gaza. The north has been reduced to rubble that crushes thousands of people who survive while waiting for rescue groups that work with their hands removing tons of rubble because Israel prevents the entry of fuel. Fares Afana, head of the emergency services in the north of Gaza, assures that people are dying of hunger and that Israel is destroying all that is alive. The Islamic resistance in Lebanon carried out 3 operations against Israeli military equipment and facilities on Thursday. Hezbollah has hit several Merkava tanks and bombed Zionist military installations and formations in the Sheba farms. In response to these military attacks, the occupier has again targeted several homes and civilian areas in southern Lebanon, especially in the areas of Kanir, Deir Kanun, Al-Nar and Al-Rajan. They have also repeated attacks against facilities of the United Nations Interim Force, from where they denounced the attack on one of its watchtowers in Kafr Kela. In Spain, the legislator and General Secretary of the Unidas Podemos coalition, Ione Belarra, accused the Spanish government of being an accomplice of the genocide in Gaza. Belarra highlighted the hypocrisy of Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez when calling for an arms embargo on Israel while authorizing millionaire payments for world trade with that country. The lawmaker assured that the government has kept the arms trade with Israel after October 7th. Belarra granted that Sanchez has been pursuing a double-standard policy, supporting the Palestinian people on his keynote addresses while opening the Spanish ports to the ships that transport the munitions with which Israel murders women and children in Gaza, the West Bank, and now Lebanon.
Look, President, I think that what we are talking about is very serious. Past Sunday, Israel did this. It burned alive dozens of people in tents when they were in a refugee hospital. What difference does this make to the gas chambers of the Nazis? I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, the President, no difference. And we are being complicit as a country in this genocide. You go around the world talking about an arms embargo that you are unable to pursue as a government. The government, your government, has sold weapons after October 7. You have bought weapons worth 1 billion euros, 1 billion euros, ladies and gentlemen. During this year of genocide, you have allowed the transport of weapons through our ports. All this year, if you really believe in the arms embargo, Mr. Sanchez, stop lying and apply it once and for all.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In China, the Venezuelan Vice President for Communication, Culture and Tourism, Alfred Ñañez, and teleSUR President Patricia Villegas held meetings with the HUA technology executives in the city of Nanhao in the framework of the 6th World Media Summit. The meeting with the Chinese company, part of the first group of businesses of the future of digital economy, follows in the premise set by President Nicolás Maduro to assess the risk and opportunities for the correct use of artificial intelligence in benefit and not in replacement of humans. The media summit is being held in the Xinjiang Uyghur region until October 20th to debate the role of artificial intelligence technology in the media industry, addressing the challenges posed by artificial intelligence and encouraging the harnessing of its cutting-edge innovations while combating its use for cognitive warfare. On Wednesday, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, set a goal for the six-year term 2025-2031 that 70% of the country's budget will be allocated to the people's power. He said this at the event held at the Teresa Carreño Theater in Caracas, the country's capital, in the presence of coffee farmers, organizations of popular power, and representatives of the Brazilian landless movement. The head of state emphasized that the objective is to promote a productive homeland with new models of management and production. The Bolivarian leader recognized, after evaluating the large popular consultation processes that have taken place, the management capabilities of the communities.
I am setting the goal as it has to be, Madam Vice President, Minister Angel Prado. The goal in these next 6 years of popular government with the people as president from January 10, 2025 to January 10, 2031 is that 70% of the country's resources go directly to popular power through the new mechanisms of consultation, sovereign decision of the people at the base level.
In Venezuela, during his television program, the first vice president of the United Socialist Party, Diosdado Cabello, ratified his support to the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, in the face of the coup attempts promoted by the various narco-paramilitary groups and corrupt politicians of the Colombian ultra-right wing.
Yo lo dije la semana pasada y lo ratifico.
I said last week and I ratified. Full as the full moon, I have nothing to decide when it comes to supporting someone in Colombia. I have nothing to decide, because that is decided. I will never prefer Uribe over Petro. I will never prefer Duque over Petro. I will never prefer Pastrana over Petro. I will never prefer Santos over Petro. I will never prefer Vicky Dávila over Petro. That is narco-paramilitarism, and President Petro has tried to settle that country, closing the way for 4 years. 4 years of attacks against drug trafficking has its impacts, especially in the pockets of drug traffickers, in their checkbook.
Tiene su impacto, sobre todo en el bolsillo de los narcotraficantes.
In Colombia, the government of President Gustavo Petro filed the bill to coordinate the indigenous jurisdiction and the national judicial system. This is an initiative led by the Minister of Justice, Ángela María Buitriago, and the President of the Superior Council of the Judiciary, Diana Remolinos. This is the first recognition of the due process of 116 indigenous justice systems in Colombia. It also represents an important step forward in the regulation of Article 246 of the political constitution of the country, which recognizes that indigenous peoples have the right to be judged under their own authorities and procedures. In Bolivia, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal warned about new obstacles that are being deployed to prevent the country from electing the highest authorities of the judiciary in December. Our correspondent Freddy Morales tells us the details.
The judicial elections, a year late, must be held next December 1st and are in the hands of the Supreme Electoral Court, but new obstacles have arisen. Two people who were not qualified as candidates have requested the judiciary to halt the process.
We are concerned because we see that there is a double discourse, a double standard that is leading to a desire to overturn the 2024 judicial elections. We as an assembly are endorsed, but there are practically two people who have presented this appeal who are trying to paralyze or overturn this electoral process.
The legislature, which must carry out the pre-selection of candidates, took almost 2 years in this process, which was paralyzed several times due to lawsuits from those who were left out.
There is a democratic institutional fragility that is being deepened. We cannot naturalize. It is not normal for authorities to be interim indefinitely. Because this affects democracy, affects the legitimacy of the institutions and affects the credibility of the state before society itself.
The appeal of those who were left out of the race now takes place when the elections are halfway to be held, in charge of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal. The election will be held on December 1st.
I have been involved in electoral processes for the last 10 years, and I have never seen that an electoral process has so many obstacles. We are very concerned about the lack of legal certainty in the work carried out by the electoral body, both for the voters and the candidates.
Two lawsuits to paralyze the process were admitted by judges in the cities of Cabija and Trinidad in the last hours. The Electoral Tribunal appealed to the Constitutional Court to annul these decisions and continue with the electoral process.
We would not like to think that this is a judicial blow to the execution of the electoral processes. We hope that those who are going to review these rulings will act to protect the right of the Bolivian people to decide, to go to the polls. The people have decided and want to go to the polls on December 1st.
Bolivia is one of the few countries that elects its highest judicial authorities by popular vote. Since its new constitution came into force in 2009, these authorities have been elected twice, although with little public support. Judicial authorities serve for 6 years and cannot be re-elected to the same position.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, that you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, Haiti's Council of Government adopted a resolution condemning the massive and discriminatory deportations carried out by the Dominican Republic against its nationals. The resolution denounces a climate of growing xenophobia in which expulsions of Haitian nationals from Dominican territory are taking place without observing and respecting legal procedures. The meeting, urgently convened by Prime Minister Gary Conille, also helped to plan immediate responses that warranted respect for the human rights of its nationals. In this context, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights condemned the attacks made on organizations defending the rights of Haitians in Santo Domingo. In Panama, the 20th anniversary of the creation of the Working Group on the United States, which is part of the Latin American Council of Social Studies, also known as CLACSO, was celebrated. The opening keynote address was led by Argentine sociologist Atilio Boron, who addressed the crisis of hegemony facing the U.S. government. The sociologist questioned the current U.S.-controlled media system, which is being used to misdirect the attention of the international community. He also pointed out that Washington seeks to focus attention on Venezuelan affairs in order to justify aggressions against the Venezuelan people. The activity was held in homage to the Panamanian sociologist Marco Gandasegui, who was one of the precursors of the creation of this study group and its main promoter.
A media system highly oligopolized and controlled by the United States. And if you have any doubts, check the front pages of today's Latin American newspapers, for example. They all say the same thing. The problems are all the same. At the international level, in the midst of the genocide in Gaza, the attack on defenseless civilians in Lebanon, the horrors of the war in Ukraine, the aggression of NATO against China, the problem is Maduro. If one goes through and reviews the Mercurial, the Argentinian newspapers, the Brazilian newspapers, it seems that there is only one actor, or two actors on the international scene, Donald Trump and Biden a little bit, and Maduro.
Donald Trump y Biden un poquito y Maduro. ¿Por qué? Bueno, porque la
Why? Well, because the vision of the empire is clearly to focus our attention on the issue of Venezuela, to justify the aggression against Venezuela, to justify the war that has been waged against Venezuela for at least 8 years since 2016, with more than 930 unilateral coercive measures against Venezuela.
The United Nations organization affirmed that the resurgence of the armed conflict in Sudan is forcing the displacement to Chad of at least 25,000 people in the month of October alone. According to the report, Chad is hosting more than 600,000 displaced Sudanese people, with one of the highest influx being registered during the last week. In addition, the United Nations warned about the number of internally displaced persons, which rounds the 8 million, of which almost 40,000 were registered in the first 2 weeks of the present October. The displacements are caused by increased hostilities between the armed forces and armed groups, which have generated insecurity in the population and a state of social instability. In northern Nigeria, a fuel tanker's blast has brought about 153 deaths so far. Authorities reported that 50 others had been injured in the accident that occurred in Higawa State after the driver lost control of the vehicle. Local residents assure that gasoline flooded the town's drainage and sewage system. Local officials do not rule out an upsurge in casualties. In the United Kingdom, for the first time in history, a painting created by an artificial intelligence-powered humanoid robot will be sold at a major auction house. The 2.2-meter-high portrait, titled Artificial Intelligence God, depicts Alan Turing, the pioneer mathematician and father of modern computing. The artwork, created by the humanoid artificial intelligence robot AIDA, is expected to fetch between £100,000 and £150,000 during Sotheby's online digital art sale, scheduled from October 31st to November 7th. Developed by Aidan Mayer and an artificial intelligence specialist from the Universities of Oxford and Birmingham, AIDA uses advanced AI algorithms, cameras in its eyes, and bionic hands to produce its works. This sale marks a significant milestone in the integration of this technology and art.
I am really pleased to have my artwork in the auction at Sotheby's. And I'm pleased because this work was also displayed at the United Nations. I aim my art to spark conversations about the role of new technologies, to further the aim of the UN, to use AI for good.
It's been a really exciting time. Obviously this is a special moment. Ada makes history as the first humanoid realistic robot artist to submit work to a major auction house. It's called AI God, the painting. That's very significant. It's quite a provocative title. Why is that? Because we're absolutely seeing that we're going into this kind of post-human world. What does that mean? Well, at the moment, all humans are making decisions about all aspects of life. But we are increasingly migrating over to the algorithms making those decisions. So in actual
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.